So as we're doing this, we should build the project and the portfolio throughout the semester. So after you're in the class, and I think that this is something that I'm trying to do often, is that if I'm in class and we're working on something and there is a topic around something, then I try to also explain how this fits into the project that the students are working on and how it might fit into the assessment. Because I also think that when we talk about modules and delivery, everything shouldn't be about the assessments. There are lots of things that we need to think about in a module on game audio, for instance, or sound design that is not directly related to what you do. And some things are, but some things are more broadly. Especially when you start reading papers and thoughts from designers like Walter Murch and similar people like that, then it's so much about the conceptual and the thinking and the philosophy around things. So I think we should have that as an element also, but I think it's also important to then state that in the lesson and essentially the delivery of something, that this is more something broadly we should think about and may or may not fit directly into the assessment. We should also state the outcome of the briefs. So if we are doing continuous feedback and continuous delivery, then every component of this should be clear to the student what the component is doing. Is it a summative or formative? And for those who aren't aware of summative and formative, this is simply that the summative is a graded component. So it will give a grade and it will feed into a student's overall grade for that module and eventually then for the whole course, while a formative is essentially non-graded. A pass-fail can be both summative and formative. And in my scenario, it can be both. So we talk about a discarded element. I think that if you're delivering this, you might think about something where you ask a student to deliver something and then you're just going to get rid of that. That might not be something that you grade, because this is something that I think a student should be allowed to fail a few times, because again, it's not just a question of doing something, it is also a question of understanding this bit of you know, the feeling of this. So you might want to think about this as a formative, but again, this is something that you kind of, when you do this practically, you need to kind of think about it a little bit and see how it works. And but we should make it clear early on to any student that what these assessment, what the outcomes, what we're expecting. And then, as I said, you schedule lessons for feedback, Q&A, and reflection. And this is something where I think that we should not do feedback and Q&A reflection as tutorials only. I'm all for tutorials, and I think tutorials are really, really useful. But I also think tutorials can be difficult sometimes to use effectively in a way, because often when they appear, it can be difficult for a student maybe to know what to ask for. So I think we should schedule this. I think we should just take a lesson, one of the lessons that we're doing, and go, today is reflection instead. So we have done this over the past 4 weeks. We have worked on this project. Let's just talk about, and hopefully at that point also we've done some type of essentially assessment component. So we can talk about the outcome of this. Maybe there's some feedback. Maybe there's some verbal feedback that you received as a student, or maybe even some written feedback. So just basically break it down. And questions around what that is, and questions around the assessment and how this fit in, and also just reflection. Like, what is it that you've learned over the past 4 weeks? And I think, again, this is something that we're terrible at in education. Actually just asking the question to the student, what have you learned in the past 4 weeks? What have you learned in the past 2 weeks? So I think that this is an important aspect that we need to schedule, not just say that this is something that happens outside of the lesson. So I think that there's usually time within a module delivery, within the delivery of everything, to do this. And of course, there will be more or less, but I think that 1 or 2 of these lessons where you do this, I think is something that we should try and do, because it gives you a moment to maybe just sit back and think about what it is that you've done, think about maybe what other people have done also, but also what you have actually learned and what it is that you have achieved during this time.